All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating concept: why doing well with money has surprisingly little to do with how smart you are and absolutely everything to do with how you behave. It's a wildly misunderstood topic. We tend to think about finance as this hard science, right? Kind of like physics, governed by strict laws and rigid formulas. But actually, scratch that, it's much more like psychology. It's governed by our emotions, our personal histories, and our behaviors.
Part 1. The greatest show on earth.
To completely shatter our preconceived notions about wealth, we're going to look at a stark contrast between two very different guys. First up, Ronald Read. He was born in rural Vermont, was the very first in his family to graduate high school, and spent his entire life fixing cars at a gas station and sweeping floors at JCPenney. His main hobby? Chopping firewood. Then we have Richard Fuscone. He was literally everything Ronald Read was not. Harvard-educated, had an MBA, worked as a highly successful Merrill Lynch executive, and was constantly celebrated on prestigious business magazine 40 Under 40 lists. On paper, you would totally assume the Harvard executive holds all the cards and has the golden ticket to financial success, while the humble janitor is just scraping by.
But here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. Ronald Read died in 2014 at the age of 92 with an incredible net worth of over $8 million. He actually left millions to his local hospital and library. How in the world did he do it? Well, he just saved what little he could and patiently invested in blue-chip stocks for decades. Meanwhile, around that same exact time, Richard Fuscone, who had borrowed heavily to expand a massive 18,000-square-foot mansion, was completely decimated financially by the 2008 crisis. He declared bankruptcy and faced foreclosure. Ronald Read was patient, while Richard Fuscone was greedy. It brilliantly proves that in investing, an amateur with the right temperament can massively outperform an expert who loses control of their emotions.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that financial success is definitely not a hard, math-based science. It's a behavior-driven, soft skill. Think about it. In what other field could someone with absolutely no background or training massively outperform someone with the best education in the world? You would never, ever see a janitor perform a better heart transplant than a Harvard-trained surgeon. But it happens in investing.
Moving on to part 2, why no one is crazy. To figure out why people do things with their cash that seem, frankly, totally irrational, we have to look at how our mental models are formed. We all go through life anchored to views shaped by our own unique generations, parents, and economies. A person who grew up in poverty thinks about risk very differently than the child of a wealthy banker. An Australian who hasn't seen a recession in 30 years views the economy completely differently than someone who lost everything in the Great Depression. What seems totally crazy to you might make perfect sense to me, simply because we are all plugging information into our own unique mental models. Think about the stark divide in market performance depending on when you grew up. If you were born in 1970, the stock market boomed, increasing almost tenfold during your teens and 20s. For you, stocks felt like magic wealth-generating machines. But if you were born in 1950, the market went literally nowhere during those exact same formative years. Two groups of equally smart people, separated simply by the random chance of their birth year, will go through the rest of their lives with completely different, permanently altered tolerances for risk.
And we see the exact same thing with inflation. If you were born in the 1960s, inflation during your young adult years sent prices up more than threefold. You distinctly remember gas lines and shrinking paychecks. It leaves an emotional scar that a spreadsheet simply cannot model. But if you were born in 1990, inflation was so incredibly low for most of your life that you barely even noticed it. You just cannot expect these two groups to respond to financial information in the same way.
This empathy we're talking about, it extends even to things we might intuitively view as terrible financial decisions. Take lottery tickets, for example. The lowest income households spend 4 times the amount on lotto tickets as the highest income groups, often while lacking a basic $400 emergency fund. Now, on a spreadsheet, that is crazy. But it makes a bizarre kind of sense when you realize these individuals feel that higher wages or safe neighborhoods are entirely out of reach. They are simply paying for a tangible dream of the stability that wealthier people already take for granted. We have to understand the story they are telling themselves.
Furthermore, it is absolutely vital to extend this empathy to ourselves. Modern financial tools are absolute infants. Seriously, for most of human history, you just worked until you died. The 401k wasn't even invented until 1978, and the Roth IRA, born in 1998. We are essentially winging it with systems that have only existed for a few decades. We aren't crazy, we're just newbies trying to navigate a brand new game.
Part 3. The siblings, luck, and risk.
Now we run into two hidden forces that dictate our lives, completely humbling the idea that our actions alone determine our outcomes. I absolutely love this quote by NYU professor Scott Galloway. When we judge financial success, both our own and that of others, we have to recognize that luck and risk are constantly pulling the strings behind the curtain. We are just one single person in a game with 7 billion other people and infinite moving parts.
The parallel stories of Bill Gates and his best friend Kent Evans perfectly capture this dynamic. Back in 1968, Bill Gates had the 1 in a million luck to attend Lakeside School, which was one of the only high schools in the entire world with an advanced computer. It gave him the exact head start he needed to build Microsoft. But his best friend, an early coding partner, Kent Evans, he was just as smart and just as driven. Tragically, Kent experienced a 1 in a million risk. He died in a mountaineering accident before graduating high school. The exact same force of probability worked in completely opposite directions for these two brilliant kids.
Because luck and risk are so incredibly intertwined, the line separating bold from reckless is often just a millimeter thick. Cornelius Vanderbilt and John D. Rockefeller notoriously flouted the laws of their day to build their empires. We praise extreme risk-takers as visionaries when they get lucky and succeed, but we call them foolish criminals if risk had nudged the coin flip the other way. Even Benjamin Graham, the father of value investing, made the vast majority of his fortune by breaking his own strict diversification rules to heavily buy GICO stock.
Since luck is, by definition, unrepeatable, the crucial takeaway here is that we really need to stop trying to blindly copy the exact moves of billionaires. Their outcomes are so extreme that luck undoubtedly played a massive role. Instead, we should be looking for common, broad, everyday habits that consistently lead to success. And, just as importantly, forgive ourselves when the unforgiving realities of risk deal us a bad hand.
Which brings us to part 4, the trap of never enough.
When we explore the catastrophic danger of not having a finish line, this observation by Voltaire perfectly captures how human ego, greed, and the unrelenting desire to compare ourselves to others repeatedly destroys massive fortunes. If you do not know what enough means to you, you are playing a game you can never, ever win.
Take the truly phenomenal rise of Rajat Gupta. He was orphaned as a teenager in the slums of Calcutta. Yet he achieved a staggering triumph of human potential. He became the CEO of McKinsey, partnered with Bill Gates on philanthropy, and sat on the board of 5 public companies. By 2008, his net worth was reportedly $100 million. To put that in perspective, a 5% return on that generates almost $600 an hour, 24 hours a day. He could have done anything he wanted.
But here is the catch. $100 million just wasn't enough. Surrounded by incredibly wealthy private equity tycoons, his insatiable desire to reach the billionaire tier compromised his judgment entirely. He was in the 100-millionaire circle, sure, but he desperately wanted to be in the billionaire circle. And here comes the fall. In 2008, using his seat on the Goldman Sachs board of directors, Gupta learned of a massive confidential investment Warren Buffett was about to make to save the bank. Before the public even knew, Gupta leaked this information. He engaged in insider trading. He threw away his entire legacy, his rock-solid reputation, and his freedom for a few easy bucks that he didn't even need. That is the ultimate trap of never having enough.
Finally, part 5, forgive and learn.
So, having seen the incredible impact of behavior, psychology, luck, and greed, how do we actually protect ourselves from these traps and build true wealth? It really comes down to this basic toolkit. First, empathize. Recognize that everyone's worldview is shaped by entirely different experiences. Second, give luck and risk their proper respect. Remember, nothing is quite as good or as bad as it seems. Third, forgive your own past financial failures. Finance is a soft skill, and we are all just newbies dealing with infant systems like the 401k. And finally, define what enough means for you, so you don't end up risking what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need.
I'm going to leave you to chew on this really powerful question. If money is actually a mirror of our psychology rather than just a reflection of our math skills, what exactly is your wallet revealing about you? Thanks for tuning in to this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.